Good morning, everybody.
Howdy.
In our last video, I said our cat was tearing up the office after a moth. Come to find out, it was a centipede. It was just a baby, though. It was only 4 inches long.
Only
Yeah.
4 inches long? That's long
You've
enough.
seen the centipedes that are
I
like
know.
a foot long.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. But I've checked the office, and we're centipede-free, and the cat is somewhere else. So
Good.
hopefully we can get through this with some peace and quiet. Before we get started, I wanted to give a shout out to a couple of YouTube channels that I forgot to mention in our last video. And Cassie has done her first video, and her YouTube channel is called K, just the letter K, space, me, M-E. And thank you so much for the shout out, sweetie, and we enjoyed you and your boyfriend on the VAH show last night.
Yes.
And also, for those of you that don't know, there is a dear friend that is deaf and is doing YouTube videos for the deaf. And she's getting a lot more subscribers. So if there's anyone you come across that's deaf that you want them to learn TAT, her YouTube channel is called TAT, T-A-T-T-A-S-L. And she does these in the sign language. And many of you know that our daughter interpreted a clip from the convention for her. So anyway, it's great to see all these different languages, you know, YouTube videos being done in all these different languages to reach the world. Yeah,
and we are having an adverse effect against the Watchtower machine. We are.
Hopefully.
In our last video, we talked about having so many notes from a different subject that we were going to cover, but it all tied in with what we did with the last video, but there was just so much information that we just decided to do a separate video.
That happens a lot with us, doesn't it?
Yes, it does, because it just seems to always come in from different angles, different conversations, different things that happen. And there's just so much. So again, we decided to break this one up. I don't know how long this one's going to be, and I have to admit, because this is going to end up being a delicate conversation as we get into this, I want to be very cautious with how I present things, because I don't want to mislead. We don't want to give anybody any false impressions or anything like that. So with that thought in mind,
we don't want to tell anybody what to believe.
Yeah, I did script this one out.
So we'll see if he can stick with the script.
Yeah, let's see if I can do that. And this has to do with, you know, that comment I read in the book Apostles of Denial regarding Jehovah's Witnesses causing problems for Christians. And based upon some of my own personal researching and our personal feelings regarding heaven and hell, life on earth, I'm going to come in with something that, as Jehovah's Witnesses, we were never ever taught this aspect of things that were mentioned in the Bible.
Well, you don't think about that stuff either.
No, you absolutely don't. And for the benefit of our born-again Christian friends such as Cali Girl 7525, Jason Zelda, Bridget AZAZ, if you happen to watch these, I hope that you will look at it from a different perspective, because it may seem to contradict what some of the born-again Christians believe about dying and going to heaven.
And we also don't want to give the impression that we're going to be talking negatively about the true God in heaven. You know?
Yeah, exactly. And I also want to give my deepest thanks and appreciation to my good friend, the Unknown Apostate, because I bounced some of these ideas off of him, and I also bounced a few of them off of Jerry Jones. Well, at least one certain aspect of this.
Well, they also gave us some really good ideas. You know, thanks, guys, for helping us.
Yes, and for me, it really shows that as a community, we can still have deep spiritual discussions and come away with maybe perhaps different points of views, but still having absolute respect for the things that we feel might appear to be different. So with that being said, again, I just want to reiterate that as we begin with this, do not want to give any of our friends the impression that we're bashing God. What we're trying to do is bash Watchtower because they have used and abused and overemphasized the word organization. So with that in mind, when I make these negative comments, remember that I am attacking the Watchtower word ideals of organization.
Mother,
yes. So, there's our disclaimer. Take it for what it's worth. Why have Jehovah's Witnesses caused so many problems for Christians? And it really becomes apparent because when you read books such as The Kingdom of the Cults, which Kim did read, it's ironic that even in this thick of a book, the author has dedicated more pages to the Watchtower Bible Tract Society, Jehovah's Witnesses, than any other cult or religion out there. Why is that? Why do these people that work so hard to expose these cults dedicate more to Jehovah's Witnesses?
Well, not only that, but fair's fair, because Watchtower has been bashing Christendom and other religions and other cults and beliefs from the very beginning. I mean, Russell was constantly going after other beliefs and, you know, doing all these debates with these ministers and stuff.
Yeah, this issue is not a, 21st century or it is 20th century, but this has been something that has always followed the Watchtower Bible Tract Society as they try to identify themselves as the only true religion, the only organization God's using.
Now, Mikey, do you have any proof of that?
You do. You do, dear.
You know, some dear friends have always sent us older literature, and in one of those boxes was this book. And it is called The Seven Thunders of Millennial Dawn. Now, this is the second edition, and I've got some of the other editions on PDF. It's falling apart here. This is from 1928. And I love this picture right here because it's a ringleader and looks like a circus ring here and ponies running around. And it says, repudiated Deuteronomy 18:22. Now, we all know what that scripture is talking about, the false prophets. So I'm sure you can see where this book is going. And there is a picture of Russell holding this hoop that horses are jumping through that says Plan of the Ages. Yeah, and all these horses have a date on them.
Yeah, they got to jump through this hoop once again, don't
1910, 1914, 1916, 1918, 1920, 1921, 1925. Now, we all realize those dates.
Yeah, so let's just kind of hold this up again, and we'll just hold it here for just a moment or two so you can kind of get an idea of what Kim is looking at as she discusses some of this.
Yeah. And it says, after Russell and Rutherford both failed to make the years go through their hoop, why does the show keep on advertising them? And I'm sure he's talking about the circus.
Yeah. Since
this is a circus drawing theme. And I just want to read, I wish I could read this entire book because this is really good.
And keep in mind, this is written from the perspective of another Christian from another faith. And he's beginning to expose some of the problems that Jehovah's Witnesses cause for Christians.
And this isn't a recent thing. This is 1928, and he's talking about their very beginnings, their foundations. So Jehovah's Witnesses, this is your foundation again. Okay, and it starts off just to tell you why. It is not my purpose to fling words at Russellism, because that's what the Bible students were called back then, Russellites. What I hope to do is to call back some of its own words that it would like to forget and let it tell its own blunders. So they had these bad history and blunders clear back in the 20s.
And other Christians recognized it.
Yeah. Going on, it says, I have no quarrel with the credulous followers of Mr. Russell. They have denied so many of my statements that I have reason to believe they are really not well informed about their own history as a cult. Wow. This fits today.
It's still applicable today, isn't it? They don't know their history.
Yeah. I have made something of a study of cults and isms, and my conviction is that God compels every outstanding heresy to carry exposed threads that will ravel it out for prayerfully thoughtful people. Now I'm going to skip a little bit here because it talks about people are basically gullible. Yes, we are. Now he's going to talk about their predictions. If the Russell/Rutherford guesses had been the very vagaries of some old settler who predicted events by goose bones, black cats, dog howling, or the tilt of a new moon, we might dismiss them with a smile, but these men presume to unscare sin lovers who feared to meet an offended God, and their promises persisted when their prophecies failed. In a dim light, you can frighten people by putting a time fuse in a green pumpkin, but the hoax becomes apparent when the explosion of the improvised bomb is long overdue. My contention is that someone put new fuses into the pumpkins. That's what they do.
That's what they do.
Now I have no doubt that many people have occasion to fear the wrath of God, but the pity is that fleeing from a false alarm, they have taken refuge in the shadow of a slumbering volcano. Now this is what he's saying about the Bible students back in 1928.
And nothing's changed even down to this day.
Yeah. Let me assure the reader that I have no objection to the resurrection of the dead and the translation of the saints before the end of 1914 or any other year that pleases God. But the menace of these prophecies, see, and that goes along with what Mike's going to be talking about, the damage they do to Christianity. The menace of these prophecies was that they were used to frighten or bribe people into accepting soul-deceiving heresies. So that's the damage that Watchtower, the Bible students, were doing. Just a little bit more, and then I got to go over to the next page. When the 1914 bomb failed to explode, Mr. Russell warped some words of the language to fit the failure. In the foreword of Volume 2, dated 1916, he explained that the Gentile times chronologically ended in 1914. Later, Mr. Rutherford employed another verbal subterfuge by saying the old world legally ended in 1914. Why not go farther and say that Abraham chronologically raised from the dead and the saints were legally translated in 1914?
Now, if anybody was to rewrite this paragraph today, now they can say, well, that generation of 1914 is going to overlap.
Yeah.
Nothing has changed. They have an absolute failed ideology surrounding 1914, and every time it fails they have to come out with another set of words to prop it up, such as chronologically failed, and the other one that legally failed. Well, now it's overlapping. Nothing has changed with this organization.
Yeah. It was ended, it goes along with their invisible ending of these days.
Yeah, that's right. It ended invisibly, and Jesus took his throne invisibly.
Apparently, Mr. Rutherford is not wholly satisfied with these efforts to dodge, for he says in his Heart Book, page 250, why should we quibble now about dates? Since his own, and that's how they feel today.
Yeah.
Since his own predictions for 1925 have failed, I have no doubt he would like very much to unquibble a number of dates.
Well, isn't that what they did in that recent convention talk?
About 1975?
About 1975. I don't remember his exact words. He said, how did he word that, dear? Jehovah's, we were early.
Jehovah wasn't late. We were early.
We were early.
Our perception was wrong.
Yeah.
And I believe another thing he said is perception does not change reality.
Perception, there we go. That's what I was looking for, perception.
So instead of just coming out and saying, we screwed up, we're sorry.
No. So they have to surround themselves with a whole bunch of different words so that the JW sitting in that audience is going, oh, what a blessing from Jehovah.
Yeah, they admit. Okay, now I just want to mention why this was all put into this booklet and handed out to people in the introduction here, but it also brings out that Watchtower wanted to run away and did not want to even hear about their failed prophecies and stuff, just like today.
They're still running away today.
Yeah.
They're still running away.
But this is proof that they did it even back in the 20s. Okay, now this is the introduction to this book by the editor of the Sunday School Times. Dr. Shattuck's books exposing the unscriptural theories of evolution, and it goes through to name his books.
Well, wait, but it's the unscriptural theory. Well, now it's the scientific theories of evolution. It's being propped up.
Well, I'm just reading the quote from the book.
Yeah,
that's not me saying that. That's what the book says.
That's true, but now when you re-examine this, you can see that it's being propped up by the word scientific theory of evolution.
Okay. Some time ago, a number of citizens in his locality who had been furnished free literature on Russellism urged a public debate between Dr. Shattuck and a representative of Millennial Dawn. Now, when he says Millennial Dawn, that means the Bible students. Arrangements were underway for such a debate, but when the Russellites presented in writing their propositions governing the debate, they were found to include the following: that B.H. Shattuck furnish a bond of $500 as guarantee that he will not refer to any quotation contained in any periodical or book published by the International Bible Students Association, and if B.H. Shattuck shall refer to any quotation or book published by the International Bible Students Association, he shall at once pay the sum of $500 to his opponent in this debate. Now there's a few dots in there, but what they've done, unlike Watchtower, they go do a copy of the actual letter. So you can read the entire letter, you know, to see what the dots are.
Right.
Like I said, there's so much in here. That ended the negotiations. The followers of Pastor Russell knew that Dr. Shattuck had in his possession several editions of Russell's books and would make public exposure of the changes that had been made in these books after Russell's death. So even though this Dr. Shattuck never was a witness, he was an apostate that was wanting to expose them. Okay, but anyway, that was the end of the debate. And there ended up being no debate. And I don't want to get into this, but one of the subheadings on the next page is Thunders or Blunders. And he gets into... oh, you know what? I do want to read this first paragraph.
Yeah,
sorry about that.
You did.
Yeah, I do want to read at least this first paragraph.
That's why I didn't jump in, because I knew you wanted to read this.
Okay, Thunders or Blunders, because this makes a good point of how they're trying to dodge sin.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what they're doing with the child abuse.
With the child abuse, they're trying to dodge. Yeah, they're trying to dodge all this.
Well, they say it's sin, so they're trying to
dodge the legal implications. Crime,
criminal charges. It is not my purpose to make sport of these books. It will be enough to let them speak for themselves. Well, you and I kind of like to make sport of them.
Mock and shock.
Yeah. Okay. So back to the book. It is my conviction that thousands of sincere people have been drawn to the organization founded by Mr. Russell because the doctrines deal gently with sin. I write because the world ought to know just how dependable were his claims. And then he goes into their failed prophecies. And so here is a Christian pastor who is trying to help these Bible students, you know, realize that what they're actually involved with this organization.
Yeah, because even early on, you can see that Russell, and even through Rutherford and all the other presidents, is that Watchtower cares nothing about truth. All they want to do is establish customs. It's customary for a Jehovah's Witness. If you don't believe our customs, then you have no business being a JW. And that really causes problems, not only for ex-members who want to be people of faith, that it also causes problems for those that try to help wake up Jehovah's Witnesses, because there's an absolute disconnect. If you have some time, I would encourage you to go to Cali Girl 7525, her channel, and scroll till you find the video that's entitled Phone Call with the Jehovah's Witness. JW admits Watchtower predicted 1975.
The date of the video is June 12th, 2017.
And so as she talks with this JW, from a Christian perspective, you can absolutely see that this JW Christian is absolutely disconnected from what the Bible actually says. And this is what we're getting at. So before we look at some other problems that Watchtower JW causes for Christians, let's establish one factor that stays with Jehovah's Witnesses every time you try to argue with them, and it stays with those who have exited this cult. Most of you know, and all of you know, that Kim and I, we get inundated with emails from those that are leaving, and there's one reoccurring thing, and especially with those that have left the organization 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. In the back of your mind, you're saying, oh my God, what if they're right? Or you begin to see something happening in the world, and you might begin to think, oh, Watchtower was right, I need to get back to the meetings if I want to survive Armageddon. And some have even said, you know, now that I'm awake, where do you go to worship? Why do these questions come up so often? It's because the Watchtower Bible Tract Society has indoctrinated us with words such as God's organization. So let's take a look at some of the things that I remember being stated when I was with the JWs. And some of you will recall many of these points. Now, I'm not going to take the time to peruse these books to get the exact quotes, because in the comment section, I guarantee it that there's going to be a flood of those ex-witnesses that are going to say, yeah. And I also remember them saying this to qualify God having an organization in the time of the end.
So that was big in the Watchtowers back in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah. So in order for the Jehovah's Witnesses to sell you on the fact that God has a modern day organization, they have to convince you that He has always had an organization. In fact, I even recall these words from a circuit overseer one time, that Jehovah is such, that Jehovah God is the great organizer. So Jehovah's Witnesses, let's pay close attention to how great of an organizer Jehovah really is.
Just to re-emphasize, we are not talking about the Almighty.
No, we are not trying to put God in a bad light whatsoever. This is what we're talking about, how those that have come out also begin to turn their back, become, anti-theists, because all of these indoctrinated things prove one thing, and I'll get to that at the very end. So instead of, in order to sell the modern day thought that Jehovah has a heavenly organization, here's your problem that idea has caused, because you say that God has a heavenly organization. But Jehovah's Witnesses, didn't some of those angels rebel against that heavenly organization? In order to sell a modern day organization, Jehovah's Witnesses will tell you that Jehovah God organized the first human pair and put them in the Garden of Eden, in the paradise earth. Here's your problem with that idea. Adam and Eve rebelled against that organization. In order to sell a modern day organization of God, Jehovah's Witnesses will tell you that Jehovah was able to organize the nation of Israel and lead them out of Egypt. Here's the problem with that idea. Almost immediately, they built a golden calf and turned to false worship. So they rebelled against Jehovah's organization. In order to sell a modern day organization of God, JWs will tell you that Jehovah's organization had pure worship established in Jerusalem. Well, here's the problem with that, Jehovah's Witnesses. Israel apostatized against that organization.
Well, look at even the Pharisees and Sadducees, their elders and circuit overseers
rebelled against God's instruction, his organizational instructions at that time. After punishing Israel, God once again organized the nation of Israel and allowed the temple to be rebuilt to reestablish organized pure worship. Well, here's the problem with that. Jehovah's Witnesses, God's Son comes to earth and prophesies that their second destruction was going to come in 70, or not in 70 CE, but within that generation. So once again, we see this nation of Israel rebelled against Jehovah's organization. Jehovah's Witnesses will tell you that Jehovah organized the first century Christians to begin the preaching of God's kingdom to accomplish His will. The problem with that idea is that Jehovah organized that preaching campaign at the wrong time in man's history. Paul even tells you that in his day, the apostasy, the rebellion against God,
had already started.
It was already at work. JWs, you know as well as I do that apostasy is just another word for rebelling against Jehovah's organization. So let's just all wrap this up. In order to sell a modern day organization of Jehovah God, Jehovah will tell you, JWs will tell you that Jehovah has reestablished true worship. And if you want to make it into this paradise earth, you must associate with Jehovah's modern day organization. Well, here's the problem with that idea. Your God Jehovah, He has a 100% failure rate at organization.
And it's obvious by the organization they claim is His today.
Exactly right. Because if God, as you present it, Jehovah's Witnesses, is such a great organizer of all these organizations and has a 100% failure rate, then your organization is doomed to fail. And it already is, because this YouTube community, these forums, they're exposing every piece of nonsense that you've ever written, in dating all the way back to when Pastor Russell, enough said.
Well, the thing is I do get hundreds and hundreds of emails, every month. And most of them that want to know what, I said, we're not going to tell you what to believe, but it is really simple. John 14:6.
Mm-hmm.
Christ is the way, and He never promised an organization. And I know you're going to get into that.
I'm going to get into that, but I have just a little bit more here. Jehovah's Witnesses, under Jehovah's great organization skills, and as we just recently exposed, you prefer customs instead of truth. Under these great skills of Jehovah God, He manages to break up families. Mental distress runs rampant in your organization. And the thing that confuses me the most about all of this, with all of this rebellion against Jehovah's great organizational skills, why you people still sacrifice family members to the God of the operating room while refusing blood, life-saving blood transfusion. And last but not least, in order to sell a modern-day organization of Jehovah, when you wake up and question their teaching, the elders misquote Peter's words to Christ and say, well, if you leave the organization, where are you going to go?
But I was just going to say, but isn't that what all cults teach? That you cannot survive without them. And it doesn't matter which one. They're all the same.
Yeah.
That you cannot survive without them.
Yeah. So here's the problem with that thought. If you leave, where are you going to go? Jehovah's Witnesses, get your New World Translation. Turn to John chapter 4. And we're going to read verses 19 through 24. Because, see, the Jehovah's Witnesses, in selling the concept of an organization, they do not comprehend what Christ is telling the woman at the well. The woman said to him, starting at verse 19, John chapter 4, "Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet." So now, if she is recognizing Jesus as a prophet, you would think that Jesus is right there and then is going to tell a prophecy. You would think he's going to tell a prophecy.
Oh, he does. In the future, I'm going to give you a helper. It will be an organization.
Okay, here we go. Now, this is still her quoting the woman at the well. "Our forefathers worshipped in this mountain, but you people say that in Jerusalem is the place where persons ought to worship." Jesus said to her, "Believe me, woman, here comes the prophecy. The hour is coming when neither in this mountain nor in Jerusalem will you people worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know, because salvation originates with the Jews. Nevertheless, the hour is coming, and it is now." This is Jesus talking. Not sometime in the future. It is now. "When the true worshipers will worship the Father with spirit and truth. For indeed, the Father is looking for such like ones to worship him. God is a spirit, and those worshiping him must worship with spirit and truth." That's a prophecy showing that there would be no place, no organization to go and worship God. And these are the words right out of the Son's mouth.
So worship with spirit and truth. Doesn't say anything about buildings in Warwick, does it?
Right. No, it doesn't. So now, to confirm this again, since Jehovah's Witnesses love having two witnesses to confirm truth and fact, let's go to Revelation 18:4. This is the warning that Christians should adhere to, and in particular, Jehovah's Witnesses. 18:4. "I heard another voice out of heaven say, 'Get out of her, my people, if you do not want to share with her in her sins, and if you do not want to receive part of her plagues. For her sins have massed together clear up to heaven, and God has called her acts of injustice to mind.'" I encourage you, Jehovah's Witnesses, to really go and read the entire chapter of Revelation 18, and I want you, Jehovah's Witnesses, to put in the comment section underneath this video where Jesus Christ says to go after he tells you to get out of Babylon the Great. Remember, he already prophesied that there was going to be no place to go. It's not going to be in this mountain. It's not going to be in that mountain. It's not going to be in Warwick. There was no place to go because you had to worship God with spirit and truth. So if Jesus would have given you a place to go as he's telling you to get out of Babylon the Great, then he makes a hypocrite out of himself. He makes a liar out of himself. It's not about organized religion. And this is part of the problem that you create for Christians, because you've got everybody convinced that we have to have a place to go. My goodness. Oh my goodness.
Breathe.
Yes. Now here's another, let's see, let me get back into my notes so that I stay on track. We've read Revelation 18:4, flee. Did he tell them a place to go? No. There was no need, because he had already stated some of the most comforting words that a Christian could fall in love with. And these are at Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 and 30. Matthew 11, 28 and 30. Now, because we've already stated that because of Jehovah God's organizational skills, your organization is plagued with pedophilia, child abuse,
breaking up families, mental distress,
mental problems, losing your loved ones. All of this is caused because you have an organization.
But that tells you what to do.
Yeah. You know, and you're...
With their customs.
Yeah, and you're so concerned about getting your at least now your 1 hour a month to become regular. Heaven forbid you don't get, you're not regular in service, because that eats on your conscience. And that's because this is a organization of Jehovah. Okay, Christ's words at Matthew 11:28 and 29. He says, "Come to me, all you who are toiling and loaded down." Doesn't this organization load you Jehovah's Witnesses down?
And you spend your time toiling.
And he says, "And I will refresh you. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. I am mild-tempered and lowly in heart, and you will find refreshment for your souls. For my yoke is kindly and my load is light." Jehovah's Witnesses, within this organization of Jehovah God, do you find any comfort coming from these words? No, because you haven't taken the yoke of Christ upon you. You've taken the yoke of the Watchtower Bible Tract Society, which burdens you down. How could you not fall in love with the simplicity of these words? All you have to do, Jehovah's Witnesses, is watch some of these exiting XJWs tell their story. You can see the happiness on their face. You can just see that they have absolutely found their freedom. And with happiness comes freedom. Not one time in Scripture has God's Son ever prophesied or would even allude to that there would be an organization in the time of the end.
But he said, "I'll send a helper for you." Isn't that talking about an organization?
Yeah, right. Well, honestly, why would Jesus even do that when he even knows that God's organization has a 100% failure rate? See, Jehovah's Witnesses miss a very simple clue as to how this all works.
Good morning, everybody. That's the end of part 1. Please join us for part 2. Thank you.